topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
You're listening to the ASQ Podcast for a transformational approach to life and leadership, blending soul wisdom with modern insight to create outer impact.
Well. Welcome back, Soul Questers, for another episode of the ASQ Podcast, when we focus on life, leadership, and culture. My name is Omar, and you are...
Jesse.
Yeah, why are you laughing? Why?
Because you said, well.
You know, sometimes you just gotta start like that, you know?
You had to prime it up.
You gotta prime it up. I am so excited for this guest today. I mean, I've known this guest, man, it's over 10 years now, right?
Has it been that long?
It's been that long. Yeah, it's been that long. And I actually met him through his wife and ended, which we are going to be talking about ending it, because
yes, we are. I actually have a nice little intro that I'm going to read because I have a little handy dandy note.
Yeah, I'll even tell you, because everyone's not doing it. But anyway,
everybody's not doing it.
Why don't you do your part and then we'll get to it?
All right. Well, since you've already spilled the beans, our guest today is Strather, also known as Skip DuPree II. He has built success across industries from higher education and financial services to real estate, business development, and nonprofit leadership. He's managed multi-million-dollar portfolios, built systems that create sustainable revenue, and led teams with a rare blend of clarity, humility, and conviction. But what we admire the most about him is how he's always used that success as a platform for service. In 2010, he co-founded End It, Everybody Is Not Doing It, a nonprofit that has empowered thousands of young people across South Florida through education. I had to take a deep breath because this is a nice intro. Through education, creativity, and prevention work. And today, he continues that mission as a franchise owner and area representative for ATAX here in St. Lucie County, pouring back into the community he calls home. Skip is the kind of leader who reminds us that success means more when it uplifts others, and that purpose isn't something you find, it's something you live. So please help us welcome Skip DuPree II.
Right. Well, thank you all so much. I'm just listening. I'm like, is that me? Are you really talking about me?
We are talking about you. We are talking about you.
This is the longest intro I've had so far.
Yeah. You know what she left out, though? She left out about the hip hop. You know, come on. She left out all the hip hop stuff.
I did.
You know, it's but you know, we'll get into all that. We'll get into all that. But yeah, Skip, man, it's so good to have you back. I remember when I met Sonia, you know, at a little clubhouse in Port St. Lucie, and you guys started End It, and it just grew and it keeps growing, and the impact that he had in the community is such a beautiful reflection of you and her. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. So we like to start always by talking about you, right? Your personal development, the things that you do to become the person that you have. So let's start with some of the things that really were formative for you as an individual growing up and becoming Skip.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's interesting. I was just having this conversation in a meeting just now, just kind of thinking and reflecting back from childhood until now. You know, I grew up in South Carolina, with six sisters, one passed away, but 5 sisters that I grew up with. I was the youngest. My father was an entrepreneur. My mother and father, they were in business together. He was a car dealer, and learning from them and kind of seeing how, I mean, that's where it starts, right, in the home. So I did have 2 parents, but my father passed away when I was 10.
Oh,
and
wow.
my mother passed away when I was 20 years old when I was in college. So a lot of the things that I had, and then also those things that were taken away, I think contributed to the development. And not only that, but also the passion, right? So, growing up, again, having two parents, everybody doesn't have two parents, but it was cool in that I felt loved. I got an opportunity to see business at a young age.
Yeah.
I did customer service when I was like 6 years old, because I used to go to the door when people used to come and ask about a car and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it started there. And then, of course, high school and your surroundings, people that, your friends, your friendships. I was always started drawing when I was younger. Spent a lot of time by myself because I was the only boy. So I drew a lot and stayed in my room. I was a DJ for the neighborhood as well.
That's right.
Music. But one of the things that kind of, I want to shorten this answer, but that was a big part of my life was hip hop, because I didn't have a father. So a lot of the, rappers and whatnot, they were role models for me growing up. And that's how I learned how to treat women. That's how I learned how to talk. That's how I learned how to dress. So that was a lot of I'd say the early years.
Yeah, yeah. Who was the rapper, right?
I was just gonna ask that.
No, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna ask who is the rapper, because a lot of people listening to this might be like, really?
Yeah.
What do you mean you treat women based on these were your role models? So who are those rappers that were sort of your role models that shaped you into the person that you are in treating women and so on and so forth?
Sure. Well, I'll start off by saying, first of all, a lot of what I learned was not right or correct, but then you learn later on how to really treat a woman and how to be respectful, right? But my role models was LL Cool J. Run DMC was huge. I had a guy I used to rap. He was the rapper because I started rapping and then I went into DJing, in high school. So I was the DJ for a lot of different artists. But saying that to say, but LL, Run DMC, and I was just a student, to music. I would go to the record store and just, just spend time in the record store and then come home and learn how to scratch and mix. I didn't have a lot of money for equipment.
Yeah.
So I learned how to be creative, right? But those were the artists. I mean, but you name it, I'm a hip hop head, so from Tupac to all the way back to Curtis Blow. I mean, we can talk about that, for lunch.
For lunch, exactly, yeah. so tell me about this, right? Because this is a very important part of a leader and an individual, is that aspect of creativity, but also the resilience in creativity, right? Because one of the things that hip hop did, and those of us that grew up with hip hop, it was, DIY music, right? Yeah. It's like you go into and you listen and you're constantly improving your method, improving your process. Tell us about the role of creativity and the role of the persistence that it takes within that process, because that's very important as an individual.
Yeah, sure. No, I appreciate that. That's a great question. Creativity, I love creativity, and especially, ended as a lot of the heart of, how I grew up as well. But creativity, there's no wrong answers, right? So it's a blank canvas. So you have the opportunity to think and to develop whatever you want it to be. But we talk about persistence. I think the creativity is continuing to practice that, helping to identify, where your creative zones, right? What inspires you to be creative. I think that helps with that creative method. But the other piece is identifying like where your gifts in creativity as well, because like I'm an artist as well. I love to draw people. You give me landscapes, that's not me, but every time I see people, I see art. Like I'm looking at you two right now. I'm looking at a caricature right now. You see everything through art.
You should do one.
I can do it. I can do it.
I'll take it. I'd love that.
But I see that. But one of the things that I learned though is that same creativity and that spirit of creativity can also be used in business. Right? It can also be used in problem solving. Right? Like impossible is a word that doesn't exist. Right? Right? Everything's possible. Anything's possible. But you got to figure out a way to make it happen. And I mean, we all thought we thought it was impossible to fly. Back then. Someone started something, and I'm a ready, fire, aim kind of guy. I don't always have to get it right, but I'll try it. Figure it out later.
Right. Let me ask you this, and this is probably going to be better served in the second half. But I'm curious because in business, when you say things like there are no mistakes in creativity, right? When we're talking about business, which again, this might be better served for the next segment,
but
so you
go
can
ahead.
correct me.
Go
But,
ahead.
are there wrong answers when it comes to business in terms of creativity?
Yeah, or personal development
Or
for
in
that
personal,
matter.
yeah. Because I mean, sometimes we do things and we're not necessarily thinking about what we do, and it ends up being like, oh, damn, I should have never done that. You know what I mean? Can you talk to us about that? Or your
Sure.
thoughts on that?
And yeah, the answer is yes. There are some wrong answers, but I think all things work together, right? So even on those wrong answers, I think we learn from them and you get better. You have to learn from those mistakes and see how not to make those mistakes again. And even if you do, okay, well, how did this happen again? And what did I really learn in that process? When we talk about personal growth, that's the litmus test. Are you making the same mistake again?
Yes. Okay.
Have you, even in business, I think you have to make mistakes to succeed because that's the way to learn. I think failure is one of those things that is one of those things that you can build off of. I was a C, B student sometimes, D's a lot of times, but I didn't take the honor roll until I got to college, right? But until I realized how I learned, right? What was some of the best methods. Once I started sitting in the front of the class, I started making good grades. I had no other distractions. So as I shared with you, I'm very creative. My mind is always going different places. So I can't have things in front of me. I always have to, to sit in front of the class. I retain better. So that's how I learned. So I think regarding, learning how you learn is a big part of it. But, you can definitely make mistakes in business and in trying to grow yourself because you're trying to figure it out, and I don't know that, you're always gonna, stumble across the wrong path sometimes, but you have to course correct when you find out that you're on the wrong path.
Gotcha. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
You bring up a good point, right? I know the work that you do a lot of work, with young people. How do you help them understand those ideas of being more self-aware? Number one, how do I learn? How do I feel in certain situations? How do you promote that from within yourself, but also with others around you? Because that is that aspect, and you said it so beautifully. The moment I learned how I learned, completely shifted me.
Yes.
So that's that level of self-awareness. Can you speak on that, and how do you promote that?
Yeah, I think well, the first thing, personally, I think it's important to be self-aware, to learn yourself, right? It was so freeing when I identify and again, I'm not going to go deeply in this, but a part of my personal growth is my faith, right? So as it relates to understanding what my gifts are and how to use them, I think that's one of the first big aha moments is, oh, you know what? I'm really good at this, right? So helping young people to really identify who they are because they're all different. So, when students come into Endit, one of the main things that we try to do is to help them to understand that they're an individual. There's no other person like you. You got to understand who you are. Some things that make you tick, some things that make you happy. Like you need to understand yourself. So I think, understanding yourself helps us and gives us that platform to be able to identify like things that work and what don't work for us. And it helps us to be self-aware. It helps us to be aware of, environments that we need to be in and that we don't need to be in.
Yeah.
And we need to walk away. How do we study? How do I learn? Am I hands-on? I'm a firm believer of, telling them, showing them, or doing it with them, and then letting them do it, and then letting them do it and watch them. Right. Yeah. And most people do well that way, but you have some people who just want to jump and you just tell them and they want to move forward. And that's okay too sometimes, but you just, you still need to kind of handhold them when we're talking about personal development.
Yeah. You brought up faith, right, as a grounding aspect in your life. Can you speak on the importance to you and why that's so grounding and so pivotal for you?
Yeah. And everyone's faith walk is their own, right? And I'm mindful of that. I'm probably a little radical when it comes to that. And I say radical in the sense that what I believe, I truly believe that it's true. But I say that to say what, the key is, I think, is identifying that not sometimes, but we're created, and sometimes we need help. And sometimes that help is beyond what we can do, right? Mm-hmm. So I think, the faith piece is, number one, it was passed down to me, but I've seen it in action. Mm-hmm. And even to the point, even I can get outside the spiritual piece, but if you believe in an idea, right? This whole podcast was an idea for you all, mm-hmm. right? You had to have a certain level of faith to take the first step. And sometimes that first step is, might not be the right step, but sometimes you still have to make that step in faith, even though you know that you don't have all the resources in place. So, I'll say my spiritual walk and God, he just really gives me guidance. Number one, mm-hmm. I learned years ago to learn to live by principles over emotions. Mm-hmm. Emotions will always, it's a good passenger, but it's not a good driver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So to really understand what the principles and what principles work. And ironically, like most of the, principles that we live by in business, they're spiritual laws. They're spiritual. They come from somewhere, right?
Yep.
Biblically based a lot of times. So, but I really try to walk it out. And like I said, I've just seen the faith in action and the results from that.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask a question just to sort of piggyback on that? What type of practices? I know that faith is the cornerstone, but what other practices do you utilize or incorporate into your daily existence that helps you show up as authentically as you do?
Yeah, very good question. And it's actually good that I'm glad you're asking this, because I'm getting back on a routine that I got off of. Okay. I think that's the key. We always, we can fall off sometime, but the first thing I do in the morning is I have a quiet time, and I spend time, number one, in prayer. I acknowledge that God's here. Good morning, I'm here. I say yes today, and then just kind of have a little dialogue, and then I get into reading, right? And I read every day and make sure that that's a part of that daily diet of reading and understanding and journaling as well. Journaling is another part of it. Is what did I get out of what I just read? So that spiritual, I'd say, reading my Bible in the morning is what I do, and then after that, I do have probably another 20 to 30 minutes, depending upon what my day looks like. Sometimes it can end up being an hour, mm-hmm. but I'll read another book and some things that I'm working on. But the spiritual side first, and that dialogue, and really trying to get my direction. Mm-hmm. Where do I need to be today? These are some problems I'm dealing with. Giving it to you. Yeah. Give me some guidance on how I need to figure this out. And usually, I'd say 10 out of 10 times when I do that, the day is a whole lot different than when I don't.
Yeah, I get that. I get that.
No, it does. It does
it makes a huge difference. For me personally, yeah.
So you brought up the question or the premise of an idea paired up with faith. When we come back after this commercial break, I want to talk about action, and in particular when it comes to leadership in the family, but also in business, because conceptualizing something, having the faith, and then the action that goes with it. So when we come back, I want to get into that. So let's take a brief commercial break, and we'll talk about this process of action in business and in family.
Yes, sir.
You're listening to the ASQ Podcast, a transformational approach to life and leadership. Too many of us chase clarity but feel scattered. What if your challenge isn't failure, but the threshold before expansion? Each month, we gather live for a transformational webinar where contraction becomes coherence. Register today and receive your Soul GPS journal. Begin your journey within. Scan the QR code or visit asqempowerment.com.
At ASQ, we need one platform to do it all. Funnels, emails, forms, and automations. That's why we run our entire ecosystem on Go High Level. It is the tool that saves us time and builds real connections with our audience. We believe in it, we use it, and we recommend it. Start your free trial through our affiliate link today.
We don't just find podcast guests, we find aligned voices. That's why ASQ uses Podmatch to connect with leaders and creators worldwide. It's how we've built relationships that shape life and culture. If you want meaningful conversations, join through our affiliate link today or scan the QR code. Find your match on Podmatch.
Leaders are burning out. Teams are disengaged. Cultures are fragmenting. ASQ Empowerment transforms leadership and culture from the inside out. Our Coherence Quest bridges ancient wisdom with modern neuroscience, helping organizations align, adapt, and thrive. Start with an organizational snapshot assessment. So, visit now at asqempowerment.com and schedule your briefing today. ASQ Empowerment. Lead your life. Shape your culture. Begin within.
Welcome back. You're listening to the ASQ Podcast with Dr. Jesse and Omar Ferreira, a transformational approach to life and leadership.
All right, so we're back with Skip DuPree. So Skip, like I mentioned earlier, right, you brought up that great premise of idea, faith, action. Can you show us, or let's talk about how that manifests first as a father and as a husband. I want to start there, and then we could get into the business aspect. So let's talk about how that idea of bringing in all that you have learned throughout your life and showing up as a father and as a husband.
That's a loaded question, Omar.
He tends to ask those loaded questions.
Yeah,
it's all good. I'd say number one, having an idea. I mean, having a family, number one. I think everyone kind of has an idea what they want their family to be like, right? And I think a lot of the responsibility as a parent, I wear several hats, right? I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a leader in the home. So I think, it's one thing to have the idea, but I think self-assessing, number one, how am I leading? And then what are the impacts of how I'm leading, right? So sometimes, I can speak, for instance, like with my daughters, I've learned that the better the relationship that I have with them, the more they're responsive to direction and correction, right? So having those relational goals in the house is really important, that, you keep your listening hat on, there's trust in the home. I think, building a family is not easy. I think, and of course, being married, having kids, it's a partnership as well. Yeah. So it's a dynamic, and, although I'm considered a leader in the home, my wife is also is co-leading, right? And it's not just what I say, but, it's having that balance as well. So a lot of it is getting the feedback in regard to what's working, maybe some things that I didn't know. I'm a 360-degree leader as well. So, my daughters, they can come and correct me, and my son as well. But at the same time, be willing and ready, when there needs to be change in the home or change in some things that we're doing. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but
no, it's perfect. It's perfect. Because one of the things that that you hear in this modern men movement is, the man is the leader. Traditionally, you hear that, and I love that idea of co-leadering with your wife. Expand on the importance of that in particular, because the importance of understanding that you're two horses pulling the carriage in the same direction, I think, is paramount.
Yes. And I have a formula, and this is called, I call it the successful family formula. And I didn't write it. This is actually in the Ephesians, but husbands, must love your wives, right? So we're required to love them. Wives, respect your husbands. Children, obey your parents, right? So if I'm loving her sacrificially, she should feel what she needs to feel, because women need to feel loved, right? Yep. And we need to feel respected. But usually, anytime anything is out of balance, usually there's something that there's a misstep. I don't feel respected, or she's not feeling loved, or the children or our daughters or our kids are not obeying us. So I think having a centralized law in the home that everyone understands, this is the foundation of what we do and how we communicate, how we solve problems. We don't yell, we're not a yelling house, but sometimes we do get emotional, right? So, when those emotions rise, we need to tone it down a little bit, but, we're respectful to one another. And I think it's not easy though. I mean, having having a family a successful family, I'd say, it takes work. And again, it comes with failures too. You're gonna have those situations to where you're not gonna win some battles, and it's not trying to win, but sometimes it's battles within that we're trying to overcome.
Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely.
Can I ask a question? What when you're talking about how you lead and how you co-lead in your home, how does that translate out in society now, in within Ended and the things that you and your wife are doing together? How does that show up? Does that make sense? Hello?
I think he froze.
Uh-oh.
Skip. Oh, look, we got
a little bit of breather time here.
Yeah, we have our first technical difficulty in the show.
I love
That's
it.
pretty odd.
I love it. No, and that's okay. We're just going to keep flowing with it.
Yeah, we're just going to keep flowing with it.
So one of the questions I was trying to ask him was like, he has this sort of process at home, right? And it's this idea of this plan that he has out, right?
What I called it, when he mentioned that, what I wrote down was kind of like a purpose of a mission and a vision, right?
Okay.
Because you have a mission about the husband loving the wife and the wife respecting the husband, because now you're targeting those needs that we want,
right?
Those individual needs, the thing that makes us, what we call the desire gateway, right?
Right. Okay.
So when you understand that your mission is to be able, as a person, is to be able to understand and stay focused on that mission, right, and that vision. And then I think that also translates into the business aspect, right, because in the business aspect, what's your North Star?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Are you asking me what's my North Star?
No. I'm saying, like, to me, like, it's in general. It's like, what is your North Star?
Yeah. And so how do you get somebody to to tune into, okay, what is your North Star? You know what I mean? Like, how would you go about
that? Well, like he mentioned, right? Number one is identifying the desires, right? What is it what is it that we want to accomplish in our families, right? Most families, I think, don't really think about that, like, as well as he did.
So Skip lost power. Okay.
We're gonna have to have him back, and I'm gonna have to just set up a long version on this one. But going back, it's like, how many of us do have a mission in our families, right? Businesses have mission and they have vision statements, right? So when you have that North Star, when you have that idea of this is how the family needs to go, this is how the things need to go, it gives you a much better gauge, right, as to, am I off the track, or am I on the track, right? So I think that on families, that's so much hard to do, because
it is harder
because we don't think about it like that.
I was just going to say, it's because we're not thinking about it
exactly
way.
Yeah.
So then what would you say is a good way to start thinking about it? Like, how do we lead our personal, and then how does that show up in I mean, I feel like we're really transparent.
Well, but here's one of the things, right? And here's something that I've learned not too long ago about like he was mentioning, becoming self-aware. How do you become? Oh, there he is. He's back.
He came back. Awesome.
Hey, sorry about that.
We were just recapping a little bit of what we discussed a little bit about. So now we're glad you're back, though. Thank you for coming back.
Yeah. So one of the things, we were just talking about this, and I think that it was interesting that you mentioned how your role is to love your wife, her role is to respect you. And one of the things that we talk about is about our desires, right? We call it the desire gateway, because deep down inside, that's what we want. Women want to feel loved. We want to feel respected as men. But to me, it sounded like a business mission, so to speak, right? Yeah. A mission, right?
Kind of.
Yes.
Like a mission statement, right? And so we wanted to talk about, number one, why is that mentality of a mission so important? Because again, you're the first person that we've talked to that has something like that for the family, right?
Yeah.
But why is it so important to have that within your family, but then also within business?
Right.
Yeah. Great question. So the mission helps everyone to understand the why. They understand the why. So the why, once you understand the why, everything else kind of is secondary, right? So having a mission, it gives us guidance regarding how we should resolve problems. When we come to a fork in the road and there's a question that we didn't come across, the mission statement should help us to kind of get back on track, right? We've had several situations specifically within it, that opportunities that came up, and we're like, okay, well, this is a great opportunity. Looks like the path is set, but it doesn't align with our mission. So we have to say no, right? So I think there's situations like that to where it keeps you grounded. It kind of keeps a path in front of you as well. But it also tells everyone what the rules are regarding like how we should do what we do. And I'm a fan of building on the mission statement, and ensuring that, each component of the mission for us, at least, that how do we act out the mission now? You know what I mean? How do we actually make this real? It's one thing to have it on paper, but how do we make this real in specific segments of the mission, right? So we have to have some practical, not only knowledge, but some practical evidence, and also the things that we do, we have to do it. We have to, everyone has to at least agree to it as well. And the other side of it is one of those things to where, once the mission is set, now it's not up for discussion because that's the mission.
Yeah.
What I mean? So we're not going to abandon this. This is what we said. This is how this is our culture.
I love that because a lot of times people do forget about, we know organizations who completely have forgotten about what their mission is, but using that as what we referred to when you were off for a few minutes as the North Star, like that's your compass. That's what you're using to sort of, okay, this is not in alignment with what we're doing because it doesn't fall in line with our mission. You know what I mean? So yeah, I like that.
Yeah. And something that also stood out for me was because again, it struck me that you apply it to the family. Yeah. Right. Why is it so important, particularly in our times right now, where marriages are kind of like taboo now, right? I mean, we've been married 24 years. We've been together 24 years, and we love each other, and we have a great time together, right? But tell us about that, the importance of having that North Star in your family, right? Because that makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. Well, and again, it's the thing, it's the glue that keeps you together, right? Heard someone say this just recently. Matter of fact, I got an opportunity to go see Montel Jordan last weekend.
Oh my God. Right. Montel Jordan who? No, I'm just
yeah. He's a pastor now, which is cool.
That's interesting.
He was an amazing speaker, but he was talking about marriage, and what he said was, he was like, divorce is just not an option, right? It's like if you had a sword, right, and the sword was on the table, and it was like, if we got upset with each other, we're going to use this sword, and it's on the table, right? Take it off the table, right? So there's some things that you just take off the table, it's not even an option. Right. So I think once you come to terms, we come to terms that, look, we are in this for life, right? Till death do us part. We meant what we said, and I think that's really important. But in today's society, there's not a lot of the, I say this type of, even what you all are doing now is not common, right? So even trying to discover, like, how do you keep families together? Like, a lot of people aren't interested in that. They want to come in and get what they can get. Kids and students, families, young people now are struggling because they don't have role models, because the families are broken. And I was just having this conversation just recently about abstinence and purity, right? So we teach abstinence, it's just one of those things, right? And I understand that there's going to be a lot of students and people who don't practice that. But there's so many things that happen once a family has been created, and then once that family is broken, there's a ton of dynamics that happens from that, right? Yeah. So, once we start toying with it and trying to be safe, and I get the safe piece, but it's like, just don't do it, right?
Yeah.
Fight the desire,
Right. Now, let's segue into culture, right? Because again, the beautiful thing about what we're talking about is how you. And again, I wanted to spend some time on the family because I think that's super pivotal in the effects that it has on culture. Now, let's talk about leadership from the standpoint of how you bring all these personal principles into culture, in the work that you do, in business, in the nonprofit world. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, number one, our mission, it is to prevent at-risk behaviors in preteen and teenage youth. We are a faith-based organization, and even with ATAX, my business partner, we have an understanding of how we operate, right, and how we treat people. Understanding, and ATAX is our mission statement is that have fun and change lives. It's just as simple as that, right? But understanding the mission, when we're talking about, and sometimes there's some situations to where you may have to let someone go, or maybe you may have to have a situation where you have a conversation with someone and it's not, it's conflict. How do we handle that? Well, number one, our mission says this, but also our faith says this. So we do it in love, right? Yeah. We don't want to just go off on someone or have them leaving, demoralized, right? We still want them to leave with their head up, but understand what the issue was and how to resolve what happened, right? Yeah. So I think having that culture to where, not only me as a business owner or a leader, but also the employees, we lift each other up. We have an environment to where we don't disrespect each other. We don't talk about each other. If you have an issue with someone, you go and you have a conversation with them. But the biggest piece, I think, is having strong trust and communication. And those are, again, those foundational pieces of a relationship. You got to have trust before you have communication. If you don't have the trust, communication is going to be off, right? So ensuring that trust is laid. We have to continue to build and rebuild sometimes, because sometimes it can be broken and you have to go back and reestablish that trust so that you can build from there. And then you can go to healthy conflict and other things.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, because, in the work that I've done with leadership and the studying and whatnot, a lot of people go to, well, you have to have communication. Communication is the foundation, right? But I agree with you. I think that trust is really important. Yes. How do you establish trust in your organizations and in the things that you do? How do you go about doing that?
Sure. Well, trust is established in the way that we do it, which is we do what we say we're going to do. That's the first piece, right? If I tell you I'm going to be someplace, tell you I'm going to be here on time, I'm going to be here early, right? So that's the first thing, is we do what we say we're going to do. I think the second piece is we establish respect of boundaries. We get an opportunity to learn people and to learn, what's important to them, and some things that may be some things that we need to stay away from. So we respect boundaries as well. But I think the respect and coming through with your word, keeping your word with what you're going to do, I think that's the biggest piece, because when you create hope, you don't want to break that hope. You know what I mean? You want to make sure that you can honor what you said. And I think that's the key. I'm saying a lot of words just to say, do what you say you're going to do. Yeah. Then you can establish trust for the most part.
Yeah. I've been doing some work on thinking about the difference between shareholders and stakeholders, right? And you've been in business, around business all your life. And what you're mentioning is an approach that really takes into consideration stakeholders, right? Because the actions that we take on business, whether we like to admit it or not, also have a cultural impact, right? Absolutely. Because if a person has to let go and all that stuff. Can you talk about, from the business standpoint, because everyone wants to make money, everybody wants to feel secure, and we don't want to run away from that aspect. We want to be practical about it. But tell us about the importance of approaching business from this standpoint of stakeholders, having conversations with people that are based on trust, having conversations with people that are based on love, having conversations and business practices that are also keeping into consideration the impact that it has on our community. Can we talk about that? Because I feel like this is the evolution that we all need to be striving for.
I agree. And that's tough. It's interesting how this morning I had a pre-conversation about this, but profit and helping the community is like there's a fine line there, right? Yeah. To where there's gain and there's giving, right? Yep. We want to give, but yet we have to survive, right? So there's the business side of things to where we do want to do things in order. We understand that there is pricing, there's costs associated with what we're doing. We do have to sustain our business long term, and we have long term planning. So there is a cost associated with this, right? But built into the model, I'd say, and it's different. For the for-profit, we built into our for-profit model a component of giving, right? So for Christmas, like we do stuff for kids, that's a part of what we do. So that's giving back to the community to ensure that it's not, I want to show you all, it's not just about profit. We do free taxes. Like people come in, especially, there's a lot of situations. We, I don't know how many free tax returns we did last year, but we don't, it's not just about profit, but there's situations to where we're prompted to give and we should do that. Right. On the nonprofit side, again, it can't be all giving as well. We're not just giving. There's also cost to run a nonprofit.
Of course.
So I think it's important not only that the employees are educated, but also, we talk about stakeholders, our board members and our parents and all of the individuals who really care about what we do. They understand the cost and the need for the business side of things,
Right.
But it's tough sometimes. And I have to stay in prayer that I'm not on one side and not on the other, but there's a balance.
Right. I love that you said that. I had a conversation recently with somebody, I can't remember who, but anyways, that person said that, a nonprofit, that individuals who run a nonprofit have to understand that organization is a community asset, right? Yes. But there's also still the for-profit aspect of a nonprofit, right? And so having that awareness, because you talked about that being a thin line, having that awareness and then the balance is what you're referring to. Just reminded me of that conversation and how important it is, because at the end of the day, you have to make money to make things happen, to continue. Right? To continue. Yeah. So,
And it is important to understand how you could go one way too far in either structure of business, profit or nonprofit, how you could go in there.
Can I ask you really quick then, just to piggyback on that, how do you maintain that balance? Because I think a lot of that's not an easy thing to do. And I think sometimes people get lost in that. Yeah. Like, what's one thing you can say about that?
I'll go back to it starts in the morning. It starts with that daily routine of, making sure that you're on task, you're where you need to be, that your heart is pure. I'm not coming to you with my hands out and I'm trying to get what I need. But really when we come to the table, like we want to come to the table to make sure that it's a win-win. Yeah. And I think that's the key though. I mean, for me at least, but I think the other side of it is continuing communications, because sometimes there's projects, there's customers that come in that you have to make decisions on. And it's especially when there's volume, you have to have those conversations. But the key is sometimes it's morning huddles, and sometimes it's just during the day. You might have to pull somebody aside and be like, you know what? No, look, I'm going to do this for free for this person. Just go ahead and take care of them. And that doesn't happen all the time. And you do want to have equitable services, but there's sometimes to where there's situations to where you got to put some in your heart to help somebody, and you want to be obedient.
Gotcha.
And that's the key too. I just share this is just being mindful and prayerful about where to invest.
Yeah.
Right? So in the community, right? So that's one of the things I have adopted recently is where do I invest, and to make sure that it's not just going to someone who and it could be going to a great organization or to a good place, but is this where my resources are supposed to be?
Yeah. Where am I going to get more bang for my buck? And then again, it's okay to have those conversations when it comes to that. So Skip, as we begin to arrive at the end of our conversation, right? Can you tell us about some of your aspirations in the near future, and also tell us how do people connect with you through Ended, through your business entities? Let's talk about that. Your aspirations, and then how do people connect with you?
Yeah, people mess with me because I got a real short bucket list. I believe that, Lord has given me everything that I've asked for. I think when we talk about aspirations, it's just being able to help more people. That's my aspirations. I want to be able to help more people in business, ideally to be able to hire people, provide employment opportunities and then and to be able to give back to the community more freely, right? So a lot of that's through businesses and different ventures and that type of thing. So I'm looking at some other businesses to jump into, but really and really just building what we have as well. But that's my aspirations. I'd love to travel at some point. I mean, we do travel every now and then, but long term is really with Endit. We would be able to help more students and be able to grow that. And be able to be a bigger asset to not only the community, but this country. How to get a hold of us? Our website, www.everybodyisnotdoingit.org. You have to spell that out. Everybodyisnotdoingit.org, and that's where you can get to our website for Endit. And for the most part, that's where you can find me as well. Anything
easy.
Less, it's easy.
And what about for the business aspect? Do you mind sharing some of how people locally or internationally get in contact with you?
Yeah. So we have we're part of a national franchise which is called ATAX. Our partners and I, we have the whole county of St. Lucie County, and we have 4 locations in St. Lucie County now. We're looking to build. We have 4 more territories. So if anybody's looking for a franchise or business opportunity or a different career path or a job, let me know. But just reach out to me. My phone number is 772-519-3592. Just call me.
Nice. Thank you for that.
Yeah, well, Skip, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being a part of our conversation. Thank you for being a part of our lives.
Yes.
You work with Jesse. We work together. We still run into the community. So I wanted to thank you really from the bottom of my heart for taking the time to be here with us today.
Same here. Thank you all so much for having me. I'm honored, and keep up the great work.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
All right, Soul Questers, we'll be right back after this break.
Commercial.
Brief break. Yeah.
You're listening to the ASQ Podcast, a transformational approach to life and leadership. Coming this December, A Soul's Quest, a transformational approach to life and leadership. A book that bridges science, wisdom, and lived experience so you can lead with coherence. Don't miss the launch. Join the waiting list today, scan the QR code, or visit asqempowerment.com.
At ASQ, we believe every creative deserves a safe space to share. That's why we use and proudly recommend Gnostic TV. It's where your content won't be silenced and your vision can flourish. Sign up through our affiliate link and be part of this Freedom Center platform. Create boldly on Gnostic TV. Across boardrooms, nonprofits, and communities, too many leaders are quietly burning out. They know what's not working, but not how to turn inertia into momentum. That's where I come in. I help leaders, fathers, and organizations move from quiet crisis into coherence, so cultures can thrive from the inside out. Book me today at asqempowerment.com and bring coherence to your next event.
Welcome back. You're listening to the ASQ Podcast with Dr. Jesse and Omar Ferreira, a transformational approach to life and leadership.
Yeah, welcome back, everyone. It's interesting that every time I get someone, there's always so little nuggets and caveats, things that you pick up, from everyone.
Yeah.
And again, it's you still see the passion and the desire for them to express themselves, but also to be able to contribute and give back. It's like the two-way street that is being kind of like a repetitive theme in what we're doing.
Yeah, with everybody that we've had on our show, actually.
So what stood out for you from this conversation?
So first of all, I think Skip is just a really just amazing human being. Like seriously, I just love his energy. The thing that stood out for me, because we don't have a lot of time here, is the aspect of creativity and creativity, looking at it as a blank canvas and that there are no wrong answers. And I know that he kind of went forward and said, obviously, you do things and there's choices and consequences, right? I mean, he didn't say this, but I'm practically speaking, is being able to take those things and to learn from your mistakes. You know what I mean? But you have to be able to do them in order to learn from them, right? Or move forward with a process in order to learn from it. So that's kind of what stood out for me.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that,
amongst a lot of other things, by the way.
To piggyback on that, one of the things that really stood out for me is that and I learned this before from one of the classes that I took. It was called Innovate or Die. Right, that was the name of the class. Right. But the idea is that the creativity is a spectrum, right? And also it matters on the domain. So you could be artistically creative, but there's also creative problem solving.
Right.
And how do you look at creativity as a modality that you could use, or a competency that you could use to really look at a situation with a broader perspective and find a different approach to that situation. So creativity is not just the domain of artists, that's something to expand. But the most important thing that stood out from this conversation is how the importance of the mission, right? The North Star, but that is not only applied to businesses, but also like we have to have our North Star. And the things that we talk about is about what do you want, right? That's one of the main questions that we ask. What do you want? And understanding that mission and understanding that, I think, is something that is paramount.
Yeah, I love that. That's absolutely, that's a perfect way to end this segment.
Yeah. So, well, thank you everyone for joining us today on another episode of the ASQ Podcast. Please join us next week. And always remember,
lead your life,
shape your culture, and begin within. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the ASQ Podcast. Remember to lead your life, shape your culture, begin within. Visit us at asqempowerment.com and join the movement.